that is going to be on Oscillator Sync in Padshop Pro. You can see that I have an instance of Padshop and an instance of Retrolog right here. I just basically made the same preset in both. This is the Retrolog preset, and let's see, I'm going to be playing C3, and you can see I have a sawtooth oscillator with sync, and then the filter envelope has no sustain, and then a moderate amount of decay, slight attack on oscillator 1's shape, which is controlling the effect of oscillator sync. That sounds like this. And then Padshop over here, I'm going to play the same note, switching back and forth. So Padshop obviously does not have oscillator sync built into its granular engine, but the way I achieved it was I sampled the static waveform of Retrolog. You can actually see the bounced version right here. And if I just play the bounced version, it's just a regular C3. It was a little low in volume, so I imported it in here, turned up the level 12 dB, and then again patched the filter envelope but into grain formant instead of pitch, and then no sustain, moderate amount of decay, and then a little bit of attack. So what's happening here is the duration is on 1, and when it's at 1, it plays like 3.62 milliseconds per grain, which ends up being the cycle of C3. And then speed is on 0 because it doesn't need to run through the waveform. I had to set the position to start on the attack phase of the waveform, because if it were at a different position, it wouldn't be like the exact cycle of a sawtooth waveform. It would be a phase shifted saw, which just wouldn't sound right. So then patching it into formant instead of pitch, because the way formant changes the waveform is, it's essentially pitch shifting. I think what it does more so is frequency shifting, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, so the duration is the same, but then the formant is shifting the frequency of the waveform. Actually, it's shifting the playback speed of the waveform, but that's the same thing. Fitting more of the wave cycles into the duration of a C3 note, which is, if you know about oscillator sync, that's exactly what it's doing. So it gives the exact same effect as oscillator sync, which is pretty cool, saying that the synthesizer doesn't do that. So this will work on any repeating cycle waveform. It's not going to work on a more complex waveform that evolves over time, but on any single static cycle. So you could technically load up another waveform and just play like a single part of that waveform. Like let's load up an instrument. How about dulcimer? So we have a little dulcimer sample, and that's essentially oscillator sync. If we take off the modulation, then the repeating waveform is that, and then that is what we are doing oscillator sync on. And yeah, I could go into an explanation about what oscillator sync is, but there's plenty of stuff that you can look up on the internet and how to figure that out. Basically, all right, the real brief rundown is every time one oscillator's phase restarts or begins again, every time it completes a phase, it resets the phase of the oscillator that's synced to it. So if the synced oscillator increases in pitch, its phase is still getting restarted by the modulating oscillator. So it doesn't really actually matter what oscillator is doing the modulating. It just matters that the phase is restarting at the frequency that oscillator is oscillating at. That's probably a bit difficult to understand offhand, but yeah, that's what this is doing. It's just resetting the phase at this duration, um, and